Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto manga chapter review. This one's going to be for Two Blue Vortex chapter 7, which is called The Whereabouts of the Sun. So overall, I thought it was a good chapter, very much I think exactly what we expected it to be, putting doubt in Mitski's mind, making progress with the kind of Boruto, Mitski, and Kawaki dynamic, and like trying at least setting the stage for, I suppose, the doubt, Mitski becoming one of the characters who's doubting things, and it's now I think at a point where he can't remove himself from that doubt that he already has. There is some other stuff after that where like we do a little bit of kind of recap, like, okay, what's Boruto going to be up to in the aftermath of this, and we get somewhere, but maybe we don't progress as much as we necessarily need to, and there is a little bit of stuff with the villains right at the end, but very much a setting the stage chapter. Obviously, interestingly, this is 3 of 4 from volume 2. So next chapter, chapter 8, is going to be a volume ending chapter, which is usually where the big stuff happens. But I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about, like, what can they do immediately next chapter? But anyway, let's get into going through this one kind of page by page here. So we do start off with a pretty interesting kind of cover image. It is Mitski, of course, here. I like the snake skin effect in the background here, and the colors are very nice. So nice that we get that. But yeah, let's jump in here. So we jump into, it's Mitski. Mitski gets the focus in this chapter. We go back to his characterization, which is very focused, like very focused on the whole sun, moon dynamic that they've always had going on with Mitski. But we do get it from his perspective. You know, I am the moon hovering in the darkness, and none with no light of my own to cast, which is why I need you, you who are my sun. For as long as you illuminate me, I can shine too and light up the darkness with my lunar glow. You give my life meaning, permission to live and be here. You make me feel that. Kawaki. And of course, what you get through this is that you know that this is super important to Mitski. Meeting Boruto did change Mitski and gave him this kind of purpose. But visually you're being shown him saying this as Kawaki turns around and looks at him. And it's so clear, just from the kind of emotion of what they're going for here, that it's like he doesn't get that from that. That when he looks, the person who he knows in his head is meant to be his son is not kind of shining on him, and it's not working, and that's the kind of problem. So then we cut into the action from the end of the last chapter, and that is Sage Mode Mitski coming for Boruto. They're having this fight in the forest here, of course. So we get some pretty standard action as expected. I don't think it's anything particularly fancy going on here. Like, what do we get here? Boruto throws some shurikens, Mitski blocks them, he charges in with the sort of like energy snakes, basically. Boruto dodges, he does some more dodging, he does a flying Raijin jutsu dodge, which is a nice little moment. Then they finally start to talk. Where is Kawaki? I was expecting him to be telling me, not you. But Mitsuki's just like, I'm here, not him. You should be focused on me, basically. But Shikamaru is still in contact here, so he informs Boruto, Kawaki's out cold, Mitski did it. So this information is important because it confirms to Boruto what he probably already knows, but like he knows for sure now. Mitski has his doubts, and the only reason he would come here alone is to try and get extra information on why is this happening. I know you have some questions that you need answered, basically. So yeah, he's told that basically Mitski's gone a bit rogue here. What are you going to do? So Mitski, though, has analyzed Boruto and is like, I understand your power level. It must be way off the charts to make code retreat, which tells me Kawaki is no match for you right now. So that is an interesting reveal to get, that a character is just noting that, from my impression, you are much more powerful than Kawaki. You would beat him. I can't let him get himself killed no matter the cost. Boruto's just like, hey, the fight is pointless. Don't fight me. But Mitski argues that, hey, there's another reason I left Kawaki behind, so I can let loose completely without deferring to him. And Boruto's like, well, what do you mean by that? That's between me and him. And so Mitski gets his sort of like second wind in the fight here. Even more snakes come out of his arms, and basically the heads of the snakes seem to transform into Mitski clones. And the visual effect here is kind of interesting because there's still snake things going on. It's like the clones follow the path of the kind of snake body, and Boruto once again has to dodge, but Boruto points out that, hey, more isn't necessarily better. You're just destroying the environment basically more now, as Boruto just continues to dodge. You're the root of the problem is what Mitski says. Just die already for the sake of this world. And Boruto just argues that, hey, I can't die yet. I have a ton of things to do. Which is why I don't have time to play around. And so Boruto gets serious here and actually is going to properly attack back. So he kind of jumps backwards, immediate counterattack, takes the sword out, lightning style kind of sword strikes here, take out all the clones like snake heads, and then there is a melee kind of engagement with actual Mitski. I think it's actual Mitski, or is that just the final clone? I'm pretty sure it's the final clone, he takes out with a sword strike. Then actual Mitski kind of comes up, performing a jutsu, saying, and in his head he's thinking, Boruto is so fast, what a monster. So they're both charging jutsu at this point. Mitski uses snake lightning, Boruto counters with thunderbolt, and we get an electric kind of clash here, an explosion in between both characters. But Boruto is the first to react, and he gets in super close to Mitski, sword right up against the neck, and so this is the end of the fight. But of course he doesn't land any sort of a blow. He just is like, hey, I have won, I've bested you in this fight. Mitski says, get it over with. But Boruto, this is where the real kind of important dialogue begins to come out here. You think you came prepared to die, when in fact it's that you've lost hope. You're feeling desperate. What? It's because your faith has been shaken. What you believe, or rather what you want to believe in, you can no longer trust. So some interesting stuff happening here. What are you talking about? Kawaki. The sun that had been illuminating you lost its radiance at some point. Isn't that what you feel? And we get Mitski, a little bit of a reaction from Mitski, Shikamaru thinking about this, and he goes immediately to Ino upon kind of like, he's hearing like half of this conversation. Hey, can you pick up Mitsuki's voice in the kind of transmission as well? I want to hear this full conversation. Ino argues that, hey, it's too risky, but I think it actually happens. Mitski counters back saying, like, you don't know a thing, Boruto. You're a grudge-bearing traitor. Stop pretending to know me. And so he puts the sword away at this point. But you see, I do know you. The current whereabouts of your son, at the very least. I'm your son. It's that simple. Again, more reactions. This time Mitski kind of reacts. He wraps a snake around Boruto, and he actually really freaks out here. How dare you? You're my son? You have some nerve. And Boruto just confidently replies, and yet, why hasn't this snake attacked me yet? And Mitsuki's like, why haven't you gotten loose? You could have got out in a variety of different ways. And Boruto just stands his ground and is like, I bet you realized quite a while back that he's not it, that Kawaki's not your son. No matter how close you stick to him, he refuses to illuminate you. And this has really hit home hard here. Can't be, it's not possible. You know it to be true. So, and then I think this is a very important line here that really gets across. This is the kind of real truth shaker style moment here. The reason you know it to be true is because you're the only one who gets to decide what it takes to be your son. And Mitski doesn't have anything to say in response to that. He puts away the snake, and the question is, like, who are you? Like, Mitski is so shaken about the identity of these people. What's he meant to take away from this? I don't have any intention of killing Kawaki. That's a misunderstanding. Though I do need to settle things with him at some point. But that's between us bros. Just the two of us. And then Mitski asked a different question. Why did you kill Lord Seventh? And he just responds, Lord Seventh is alive and safe. And this is a shocked moment for Mitski. Ino has this reaction. Shikamaru, we get a little bit of a reaction, of course. And then interestingly, the line after that, he's about to say my mother. He's like, his wife too. That's all I can say right now. And so even just the fact that he kind of makes that slight adjustment, and it's this acceptance of, and we'll get this in a second, this idea of he knows enough about the way the switch has happened that if he overly fights trying to correct people on this sort of stuff, it's just like a fool's errand. So he kind of keeps it simple of like, there are some things I want to fight back against, but I can ultimately like accept in this case that I have to refer to him as Lord Seventh and, you know, Lord Seventh's wife, Hinata, rather than father and mother, that sort of thing. Just a little bit of an interesting kind of point there that like, that's just the way he kind of feels. But we'll get to that moment in just a second. And then another big important moment from Boruto, he says, Mitski, I believe you're perfectly capable of shining on your own. But if you insist on needing a son, come find me anytime. And this is where we get the real kind of, you know, emotional swell moment. Boruto with a little, the hint of a grin on his face as he looks back at Mitski. And then Mitski's response, you can tell a lot of the anger has left him at this point, and he's just confused. But this line has definitely hit him of like, you know, especially because in a way they show Mitski and the background is so plain. It's like Mitski's being illuminated, and the fact that like Boruto in the background basically has the sunlight on his face, his head basically is in the position that you would assume the sun is directly in, that he is turning around and illuminating Mitski in this moment, even though this is the character who says you don't even need to be kind of illuminated. So interesting. But then we see Ino reacting to this, you know, Naruto's alive, like absolutely stunned by this. But Shikamaru just kind of says over the transmission, like, get yourself alone, Boruto, we need to talk. At this point, we do also see Kawaki wake up from his unconsciousness, and he is spotted by Ada and Demon. And he's like, hey, where's Mitski gone? And then it's clear that in between panels here, Boruto has explained a little bit to Shikamaru, but we're getting the aftermath here. I was wondering, like, would they include this in this chapter, or would we have to wait for this? But we get some of it here. So we get this idea, Shikamaru says. So in summary, thanks to Ada's Shinjutsu Omnipotence, our memories have all been rewritten to reflect what Kawaki desires. Yeah, Boruto says, just so you know, don't bother trying to figure out how omnipotence actually works. You'll soon forget it anyway. And so this is that explanation that we've already had this before, but I think it's an important thing that everyone needs to remember. And this is the whole idea of why very specific characters are taking very specific paths to properly doubt the situation of their memories, and why literally just trying to convince people on the basis of, oh, a switcheroo has taken place, is that the nature of how the omnipotence has changed people's memories forces memory and knowledge of omnipotence to basically be forgotten. It doesn't stick in your memory. And this is the explanation that Boruto gives for, like, yeah, Sarada and the class rep have told you this numerous times about what exactly has happened, but you act like this is the first time you've ever heard about this. And that's because every single time Sarada argues with you about this, you immediately forget it. It just will not stick in your memory, and it will fade. And that's part of the very power that everyone's trying to fight back against. So Boruto's just kind of like, so I need you, now that you're listening to me, to just trust me on the pure basis of it that Kawaki and I have switched places. There's no proof that I can give you of this, because omnipotence, even though right now you're along the same path as me, I need you to just trust that this is the truth, regardless of that. And Boruto does clarify, though you did figure it out on your own, and that's no mean feat, it's impressive. So highlighting the idea that Shikamaru, Amado, the characters who have come to this conclusion on their own have made a really notable breakthrough, being able to doubt things in the middle of all of this, given how kind of self-correcting in a way Omnipotence actually is. And then here's the big question. I actually thought this was a really important line. Shikamaru asks, how do we reverse it? How do we reverse Omnipotence, reverse the switch? Boruto says we can't. Those altered memories are all real to you. Besides, even if we could, it wouldn't resolve the issues between me and him. Kawaki sealed Dad away in order to protect him. There's no point unless he's satisfied and undoes it himself. Otherwise, he's bound to do it again. And Shikamaru says, if I were you, I'd be thinking about rescuing Naruto and killing Kawaki. Boruto says, he may want to kill me, but I don't feel the same way. I just want to slug him and then make up. That's all. So I like this Boruto just getting across. This is my blunt appraisal of the situation, that this is all I want to do. Now, it's not really a reveal as such. I would say the reveal here is definitely that Boruto, in what he is trying to do here, is very much acknowledging that there is no technical way to reverse this, that he views it as the only way to possibly reverse everything happening here is for me to fix things with Kawaki. I need to get Kawaki to return to the person basically he used to be. And Kawaki has to be the one to let Naruto out, to let Hinata out. And I think the implication in here as well, even if it's not super direct, is that undoes it is not just sealing Naruto away, but that unless his desire asks for things to be put back to normal, we can't actually resolve this situation in any other way. Kawaki, through Ada, has to do the same thing again to make that happen. So that's definitely the way I interpret this, is that there's not going to be some fancy thing where, like, Boruto makes a wish with Ada, or like every individual character breaks through and it like reverses itself on its own. They're very much highlighting here Kawaki needing to have this moment of reversing the choice that he made at the end of part 1 of Boruto, which is the big moment we've been waiting for. Like it's weird, like we're 7 chapters into Boruto at 2 Blue Vortex, and the concept of like, oh yeah, when are Boruto and Kawaki really going to have the kind of conflict with each other hasn't really been addressed until now. So I think this is actually quite important overall, that hey, it's still on Boruto's mind, but there is the other stuff that we also need to deal with, that there is this new villain group that probably does need to be dealt with beforehand, but we're kind of wondering when's that going to happen, and we'll deal with that in just a couple of pages time, of course. So Shikamaru then says, if you have no intent to kill Kawaki, you need to understand that you'll have to continue taking false blame regarding Naruto, and like, I don't want to put pressure on Kawaki to make him feel like he's cornered again, so he might do something drastic. So you're just going to have to stay a fugitive outside the village. Are you okay with that? And Boruto's like, yeah, that's fine. I wasn't expecting otherwise. So this is maybe the one slightly unsatisfactory kind of part of the chapter that I have, is that, so Boruto's place in the series is like what? Hanging out just outside of Kawaki's range, outside of the village. So he's close enough to where he can do stuff, but he can't really interact with people properly. I hope we eventually find out what like the Boruto status quo is going to be in terms of like, where is he living? Where is he sleeping? The whole Kashin Koji situation. Is there a base of operations that they have here? Because it feels like some organization stuff needs to happen here. That, like, we need to also have Boruto addressed, like, hey, here's everything I know about the other situation happening back in the village, and this is the truth about how we need to resolve this. But yeah, we go to the final pages here, and we deal with, this is Jura, I think, who is the Jigen Clawmark Divine Tree intelligent character. I definitely hope they give them like a name, like more clearly as a group, just so we don't have to roughly try to describe what exactly they are. But anyway, the intelligent divine tree situation here. So he has a bit of a monologue here to end the chapter. He's been reading all these books. It's curious, this world. The more knowledge I acquire, the more questions arise. And the more things I don't know, if anything, the knowledge reveals my ignorance. It's fascinating. There is one quick panel where I think it's the Sasuke one, who's Hikari, if I remember correctly, where you just get a random shot just highlighting that one of the others is in the room. By the way, it's been gradually occurring to me that none of the books here seem to hold the answers to my questions. So let's pay a visit to Uzumaki Naruto. So the big thing here is that even though it's relatively kind of mundane way to end the chapter, just reading a book, okay, their knowledge is kind of insatiable at this point, but there is something that they need to know that isn't in books that relates to their target in some way. Interested to see how this all plays out, but this means the villains are making their move. This is what we've been waiting for here in terms of like what we're dealing with, like Boruto finally addressing, here's how I'm going to kind of tackle dealing with Kawaki. Well, this is going to put pressure on Kawaki. That if these villains come out and are like, hey, Uzumaki Naruto's alive and the village has to deal with that, and where did they get the information that he's dead from? Kawaki. Things could fall apart. Kawaki could be pressured just by the villains doing something. And that's going to create some interesting situations. So I'm a little bit worried about like Boruto's status quo, but if the attack comes in, Boruto's going to be allowed to participate in the attacks, I'm guessing. So, you know, that's interesting by itself, but like I said, I think when I discussed this before, this guy definitely seems to be more focused. I would say, like, if there's specific characters are going to fight this specific villain, I think Kawaki is one of them. Whereas, of course, like, you know, Sarada makes sense to pair up with the Sasuke one, Ada and the Bug one, and all this sort of stuff. And then we have the Konohamaru and the other kind of team situation with the Moegi one. You know, this character I think probably has to be paired up with Kawaki. So I don't know, maybe they're going to do something pretty significant with Kawaki in the next one. It feels like I guess they have to start the attack and just see what's actually going to happen here, because I definitely feel like they probably do have to have all the fights take place first, and then coming out of the fights, what's left over is Boruto and Kawaki and the conflict that we've needed to resolve for all this time. So, certainly interesting stuff. So, one of those chapters where, like, I would never say this is like, was this one of the best chapters we've ever had? I'm not sure about that, but I don't have too many, like, issues with it. It maybe takes its time a little bit to present the Mitski point, just in the sense that, like, it is 30... it's like over 30 pages of the chapter just to get to the point of, like, Mitski has doubt in his mind and he sees that Boruto resembles his son more than the person he actually thinks is his son. I think a lot of the dialogue was actually, like, reasonably good, but because they chose to have a fight take place here, and it was clear it was not a super significant fight, it felt like it maybe wasted some page count that maybe could have been used elsewhere to cut away to some other characters, maybe to give a little bit more time to the villains in the kind of final section. But, you know, the big stuff is for next chapter, I'm guessing. So, yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 7. What are your thoughts on what they're doing here? Mitski seems to now join the list of characters who has some real doubts about their memories and what's going on here. Boruto is going to get some help from Shikamaru here, now that Shikamaru is doubting things. And then, what are your thoughts on the villains? Like, what are they actually going to do? How crazy of a shakeup is it going to be to see them go to the village and look for Naruto? Because that's the big question here. Is like, they're specifically saying it's not like we will go to find Kawaki who knows where Naruto is. Now, no, this guy knows where Naruto is. Like we're going to pay a visit to Naruto in that other dimension, and so it's almost suggesting that, like, Naruto be like broken out by these guys. It'll be interesting to see the scope of their powers come out, and maybe it might relate to the eventual reveal of like, oh yeah, we still don't really know the full situation when it comes to like, oh yeah, where's the tree that has captured something that this guy's actually like based on, which is the case for the other characters, but we don't know the situation with this one other than like Jigen and like Ishiki question marks. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.